The latest tech.
I'm Alexa. I can answer your questions.
Interviews.
And we are evolving, and we are seeing an amazing opportunity that is happening.
Accessibility.
Accessibility is one of our core values. It's even a part of our mission statement.
This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome to another edition of Double Tap TV. Thank you guys so much for being with us each and every single week. Please get involved like you do all the time anyway. It's feedback@ami.ca, our email address. If you want to get involved on social media, make sure you're following us first at Double Tap Canada and use that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap, when you've got a question for us, because we do get to those and we do reply to them, whether it's on this TV show or perhaps on an episode of Double Tap Canada, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on AMI Audio. I am Mark Aflalo. With me each and every single week, Stephen Scott. Stephen, how you feeling this week? We're coming off, spring is in the air. We've got Apple products we're going to be talking about today. Mother's Day, Father's Day around the corner. Lots of fun stuff going on.
Yeah, it's a great time. It's always a great time for technology, especially when it's fruit-based, which of course is one of my 5 a day. I think actually it's probably 5 of my 5 a day, because I've got my iPhone, I've got my Apple Watch, I've got my iPad, I've got my Mac. What's my 5th one going to be? AirPods. There we go. I've got my 5 a day. I'm going to be healthy as a healthy person. I'm really excited because we've got so much to talk about. Apple, as always, pulling it out of the bag. Some might say this was a bit more of a Mac-heavy event this time round, but I think for me, I've got something I'm more interested in that I want to share with you.
Well, let's flash back a little bit and remind people what exactly was announced. We got a little montage here from the keynote itself back in March, Apple's spring event. Let's take a look here at exactly what Apple announced this year so far. Here's Apple CEO Tim Cook.
Today we have some great announcements to share. We've been working hard to deliver new products and services that help you stay connected, productive, and entertained, starting with iPhone. From the very beginning, we designed iPhone SE to include some of our most advanced features and technologies while delivering the iPhone experience at an incredible price. And to tell you all about it, here's Angelina.
With the supercharged performance of M1, ultra-fast 5G, and center stage, we think you're going to love the new iPad Air.
And we're not stopping there. To tell you how we're going to take Mac even further, here's John.
This is Mac Studio and Studio Display. Mac Studio is an entirely new Mac with the unbelievable performance of our most powerful Apple Silicon. And the Studio Display is the perfect complement to Mac Studio, with a phenomenal set of features and that integrated experience Mac users love.
So, Stephen, we've got the brand new iPhone SE, which I know that you're going to talk about because you've ordered one, if not two. We've got a new iPad Air, which is extremely familiar in form factor. What excites you about the iPhone SE? Because you're not the first person to say, I'm excited about this phone. Because this phone is really, at least the way it looks, is one of the oldest phones in the book, Apple's book anyway. However, they keep refreshing it with new innards and making it more exciting on the inside. Is that what excites you?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing about the iPhone SE. People tend to think of it as a bit of a dull device, compared to what is available today, in terms of the iPhone 13 lineup, and what we get from iPhone 14 this year is going to be amazing again, although I imagine the form factor won't change too much in those devices, although we'll wait and see. But ultimately the iPhone SE does carry this classic design, which it's carried from about 2014. It's been around for a while. And the thing about it is that it has a familiarity to it. It's got the Touch ID button on it, which is, for me and for a lot of people is a really welcome thing. Face ID is a bit tricky when you're blind. It does work. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it doesn't. It does work fine. But you know what? I don't always have my phone out. I have my phone in my pocket a lot of the time. It's away. I'm using a keyboard separately. Or I'm just listening to stuff or I'm doing stuff. I don't need to have to look at the phone all the time the way that everybody else is. So for me, Touch ID is brilliant. Plus I love the home button. I just love that way to get back. And it's the same button, right? It's the same button at the bottom of the device. And I just love it. I love this style. I love the way of doing it. I thought they might have refreshed it this year. I thought they may have gone a little bit iPad mini with it, putting the Touch ID into the top right of the device. So actually a button on the top of the device, not actually on the face of it. And then that would have allowed for a bigger screen. But you know what? For me, I like the size. It's a small screen. It's not the best screen either, to be fair. But it's again, for someone with low vision, or even someone who, just is getting into the world of Apple, or even just smartphones generally, it's a really good device to start with at a good price point.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. So $549 starting price in Canada. You've got a 4.7-inch screen with the full bezel around it. The home button with Touch ID, which everybody says is great and still nice to have. But
I know you don't like it.
I don't mind it. I don't mind Touch ID. I have no arguments with it whatsoever. I just find it interesting that they're still hanging on to this iconic design. And is it only because people are out there saying, I want the home button, I need to have the home button? I think that when you force people to shift, they will realize that they don't need that home button. And let's not forget, Touch ID is still there on devices that don't have that home button anymore. Okay, it's there on the sleep wake button on the new iPad, for example. But let's go back to the iPhone SE. A15 processor. That's a pretty impressive processor. So it means that you're going to get a zippy device. With almost
That's the same processor that was inside the iPhone 13.
Exactly.
So, we're bringing it right up to date.
And you got 5G support, which is great. 2 hours extra of battery life. So all in all, this is a great, budget starting entry level device for Apple. I think that anybody who especially is switching from Android, who wants to dive into the Apple ecosystem and doesn't want to go spend $2,000 or $1,000, and as you said, there is a case for every device. There's always, it fits somewhere in the lineup. So if that's what you want to go with, then I say go with it. Okay?
Fine. Okay, great. We agree, I think. Do we? Yeah. Okay.
I think we agree. But there was more at the Apple event. We talked about the Mac Studio. We didn't talk about the Studio Display. We haven't talked about the new iPad Air yet. And I want to get into that, but I want to take a break before, because we got to reset and we got to think about this kind of big picture. So it is Double Tap TV. Stephen Scott and Mark Aflalo with you. We're talking all about Apple's most recent event. Of course, it's WWDC around the corner, which is always a fun one where we see a lot of software developments. But this one was all about hardware. So iPhone SE off the list. Let's talk about the iPad Air when we come back right here on Double Tap TV.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
We're back on Double Tap TV. Thank you guys for being with us each and every single week. Of course, if you want to get involved, our email address is feedback@ami.ca. On Twitter and all our social media, it's @DoubleTapCanada with the hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. Mark Aflalo and Stephen Scott with you as we are each and every single week. This week, we're breaking down the new products and the new hardware from Apple. Obviously, new software is right around the corner with their Worldwide Developers Conference kicking off in June. We're excited to see what's coming up in iOS 16. My God, I can't believe iOS 16, Stephen. But, we talked about the iPhone SE, definitely a place for that. The other big announcement, or the other announcement from Apple's most recent event back in March, was the iPad Air, the newly designed iPad Air, which I happen to have right in front of me, Stephen. I could actually be fooling you, to be perfectly honest, because it's pretty much identical in look and feel to the 11-inch iPad Pro. So the differences are this at the end of the day, okay? Obviously, a better processor on board than the previous generation iPad Air. You've got a single camera, whereas the iPad Pro has that 3-camera system with the LiDAR. You've got a ProMotion display on the Pro, but not on this one, which really means at the end of the day is that you're not going to see the smoothness of scrolling, if that even matters to you. Meh, who cares? And the other big thing on this one is the fact that the port at the bottom, the USB Type-C port, is not Thunderbolt. It is USB 3.0. Let's talk about the lineup for a second, okay? Because and let's do it. Maybe we'll try to break it down in price, and I will let you speak. I promise, Stephen. I'll give you an opportunity here. Okay, so price-wise, okay, it starts with the iPad, just the iPad, okay? This is an education device that looks like the original iPad form factor with that rounded edge design on the back. It's got a pretty thick bezel around the front. It's still got a home button, still got a sleep-wake button. Not compatible with Apple's second-generation Pencil, still compatible with the first one. This is truly designed for education. This is really meant for people who are going to go out and buy these in bulk for schools, who can buy it at a much cheaper rate than they would an iPad Pro, for example, or even the new iPad Air. That's not a bad price. That's a good entry point for an iPad, right? We agree?
No, listen, I'll set up my stall here. iPads I couldn't care less about. I have got some thoughts, but please, take the floor.
Yeah, it's at the entry level, but it still has all the power of everything else. It's got that great chip on board. It's got the decent screen. It does everything an iPad will do. Next one we have on the block is the iPad mini. So the iPad mini, again, has the new form factor, which is very much like the iPhone. It's got the nice flat edges, nice curved design, very little bezel, no home button. It's got the sleep wake button on the top right-hand corner that has the built-in Touch ID. It's small. It's small, okay? This is the 8-inch form factor. It's good for media consumption. If you travel a lot and you're on a plane, then you're definitely going to want to enjoy this one. I do like it. It's fun to kind of just throw in my pocket. I've had a lot of issues with battery life. I don't know about other people. But this is really, you know, if you think about the lineup of iPads, it's kind of the second in the list in terms of entry points because you're going to be paying $649 for it instead of $400 something. So you're looking at $200 more for a smaller device, single camera. It's a good device. It's good to have there. I think it has a place in the lineup. But I don't know for whom, really. Do you have an idea?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because in some ways you think that it should be the other way around. You think the Mini should precede the iPad, which is the education one, right? Because just simply by size, if nothing else, this would be seen as the entry level, but it's not. And, you know, none of these, like you say, are entry level. They're all very high-powered devices. I do like the iPad Mini. I think it's got a lovely form factor to it. I love the weight of it as well. The portability is great. So someone who really wants an iPad, maybe doesn't see the value in having a larger screen iPad or even an iPad Pro, you know, this is a really cool device to have. But anyway, carry on.
Now, at the end of the day, when it comes to these models and it comes to the iPad Pros, for example, the price point is really where this kind of helps define what you're going to be paying for this. And I'm stalling for time, Stephen, as I click to the site. The 11-inch iPad Pro, okay, starts at $999 Canadian. That's a lot of money. That's $1,000 for a tablet, okay? And the next model up, which is a 12.9-inch, which is a pretty big slate. It's a pretty big tablet, okay? This is one of the ones I would say if you're going to try and replace your computer, you're probably going to want to go with this 12.9-inch. $1,399. That's a lot for the entry level.
And that's without the keyboard.
Oh, that's no keyboard. That's just the iPad. No pencil, no keyboard, no accessories, okay? So
just buy a MacBook Air.
Yeah.
You'll save so much money.
Yeah, you pretty could. You could none of that, but you can control the amount of RAM you have at that point. It's interesting. So it's interesting to see where this lineup is. I think there's still some shifting to be had in the iPad lineup. I think there's maybe that education one's going to disappear, and this new iPad Air is going to replace that education one and drop about $100, which we'll probably see next year. But I'm not 100% sure on that because I think there's something that Apple is hanging on to that home button for, just like the iPhone SE that they're doing in the iPads as well. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think you're right. I think that it's unlikely the iPad for education will disappear because that is absolutely a market winner. They're going to make money out of this. There are schools now who are just buying loads of these in because they can get them at a good price. Obviously, they get an education discount, so they're going to get even more value for money. It's interesting, though, because I think that the lineup is a bit skewed, it's a bit off, and I think ultimately there's a problem with Apple at the moment in that it's kind of in that transition phase. I know it's in the transition from Intel to M1, but I don't mean that transition phase. I mean from essentially iPad and MacBook becoming one. That is the end result of all of this. And I feel for iPad Pro owners at the moment, a bit like you with your Mac Pro, you know, you're all beta testers for something at the minute. That's what it feels like. You're all beta testing something that eventually will become something else. My prediction is it will be called the MacPad, and, you know, that's going to be it. It's just going to be all in one. You're going to get, essentially a MacBook with a touch screen, but it's going to have the iPad OS fused in fusion with Mac OS in some hopefully usable form. I'm very nervous about this from my own perspectives, as you might understand. You know, when you start mixing touchscreens with, keyboards and stuff, it's always a bit hazy, but we'll see how it goes. But that's a long way off. The point is today, I think if you're going out to buy an iPad, if you're thinking, I want an iPad, it's going to be for home consumption, like leisure stuff, watching TV in bed or watching films in bed or whatever, then I think the iPad Air is the one to go for, simply because you're getting the good screen size, you get a good screen with it, I'd imagine. I mean, I can only imagine it's a decent screen in there. And on top of all of that, you're getting the M1 processor. So you're getting the brains of the big iPad Pro, but you're getting the a little bit of a bigger option than, say, and certainly a more powerful option than the original iPad and the iPad Mini, which is still, I think, secondary, in my view, as a good iPad.
We're going to come back in just a second because I just want to touch upon a couple other things from Apple's event as we wrap up the show. He is Stephen Scott. I am Mark Aflalo. Stick around. We'll be right back.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
We're back on Double Tap TV. Thank you guys for being with us this week and each and every single week. I am Mark Lalo, and Stephen Scott is with me all the way from Glasgow, Scotland. Stephen, can you hear? I don't know why I'm doing this.
I don't know. I'll shout,
have
hello,
no idea.
Mark. Can you hear me?
There you go.
We've got microphones and stuff, all right? I mean, you can hear me.
Wow. Can you tell it's been a while? Thank you guys for being with us. So we've talked about the iPhone SE. We've talked about the new iPad Air. We talked about the Mac Studio. I mean, it's a great device. You know, our friend Mitchell Whitfield, he got one. He's going to be joining us in a couple weeks to talk about that. And, you know, a couple other things Apple announced, one of which is this studio monitor. And, you know, Apple continues to try and design these accessories and companions for their desktop computers. And the monitor is one of these devices that I look at and I wonder who they're trying to market it for, because I think there's a clear definition of an iPad and an iPhone and an iMac and a Mac Studio, who they're aiming these products for. But when it comes to the Studio Display, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know, and I say that with all honesty because it's a really expensive monitor. It's an expensive monitor that I understand people who want, you know, have a Mac Studio might want to get a monitor with it. But when there are choices out there that are, you know, $500, $600, $700, great 4K monitors, why would you go out and spend the money that Apple is charging on one of these studio displays? Do you have a rationale for that makes sense to you?
You know, I'll be honest, and this might surprise you, but I was really looking forward to the Apple display when I heard that it was coming. And it was only like 2 or 3 days before the event when the rumors really started circulating about it, even the Mac Studio. Even that seemed to be a bit of a bolt out of the blue. I think we all expected some kind of Mac refresh, but not to that level. But I was quite excited by it because what I was looking for was a monitor which has got the built-in webcam, which has got the built-in speakers, and I knew the speakers would be good because it's a Mac display. I had the Apple Thunderbolt display back in the day, the 27-inch one. It was a big, big machine. I mean, it was heavier than probably the iMacs of today. It was a really chunky monitor, and a decent monitor. Now, you might think, well, why do you care, right? Your monitor, the one I've got behind me right now, it's pretty much always in the off state that it is. That's not just off because I'm on here. That's always off. So why do I want a monitor? The point is, I wanted something that I could have if I needed it, right? So if I have got a technical problem and I need to share my screen with someone, yes, I can get them on TeamViewer or whatever. I know you and I do this on AnyDesk and you'll see my screen, but for someone on, say, Be My Eyes who needs to see the screen via my camera, I need a monitor. So I want something that's all in one. I love the idea of the webcam being built in and the speakers and the microphones and everything else. And then this comes along and I think, are you kidding me? Are you serious? The price of this thing for what it is? And it kind of got me looking down the route of other options that could do the same, and that's why I've actually got behind me right now a Samsung 24-inch monitor, which has got a little pop-up webcam built in and speakers and microphones, and it costs less than a third of the price of what Apple are charging for this studio display. So I just don't know who it's aimed at, because I kind of looked at the whole thing when looking at the studio display, looking at the Mac Studio, thinking, why didn't you just build another iMac? Because it's not like you can rip this Mac Studio apart and upgrade it like you can with your Mac Pro. There's really nothing you can do with it. Once you've chosen the specifications, that's it. In that case, it's no different to an iMac. I don't know what the point of this was and why they just didn't create the iMac that people wanted.
I feel like they needed to make this Mac Studio bigger for thermal purposes. So that's why they made it a physically larger device. And to try and stack that into an iMac chassis would have been a bit more difficult, even though people don't care about the size of it on your desk. But I'm kind of confused as well. I think that Apple created this monitor because they had to have a monitor in order to give people an Apple option as opposed to going immediately to a third party. Now, granted, people might immediately go to a third party, but at least they're presenting people with an option. For $2,000?
That's the problem. That's the problem. I mean,
that blows my mind. That's what doesn't make sense. When you can get a smart monitor from Samsung for $700,
and that's a 32-inch
or even
monitor.
a TV.
That's a 32-inch versus the 27.
This is 27. Yeah, great. It's 5K resolution. That's wonderful. Great. It's got a webcam, which, by the way, is getting horrible reviews. It's got a whole processor on board. It runs iOS. Lovely. But that doesn't do anything for my computing experience on a daily basis. And by the way, that $19.99 Canadian is just their standard glass. If you want a matte finish, you're going to pay another $300, $400 for that.
How much do the wheels cost?
No, there's no wheels on this one. There's no wheels on this one.
No wheels in it? Oh, I'm
No,
not
no
interested.
wheels.
I'm not-
Anyhow, I think
no
it was
wheels.
a kind of one of these devices where Apple said, we have to present an Apple option. If they don't go with it, so be it, but at least we presented the option. I think that's where they're going with it. What I'm curious to see down the road, and we're probably going to see something about this at WWDC in June, is how they're going to take the Mac Pro to the next level. Are they going to keep it in the same rack mount chassis or big desktop chassis with this new great Ultra chip, or maybe an Ultra 2 or an M2 Ultra, and just they're going to have to give us room for graphics cards and external devices. So I think we're going to see it in that same body, but I'm curious to see the price point. That's what I want to see.
I totally see, from your perspective and from the work you do, I can totally understand your interest in that. From my point of view, I'm thinking, where's the consumer option? Where's the everyday person's option? Because there isn't one. And frankly, other companies are coming to the rescue. Samsung just conveniently bringing out these new monitors in different colors, that happen to marry up with the same colors of the iMac. I find that
Conveniently,
just
Stephen.
conveniently, yeah. But it seems ridiculous. In some respects, Apple have tried to solve a problem, and actually what they've done is they've just created the problem they were trying to solve, which is getting third-party options as alternatives.
Let us know what you think, guys. Feedback at ami.ca, our email address, of course, on social media at DoubleTapCanada. Use the hashtag AskDoubleTap. On behalf of Stephen Scott, I am Mark Aflalo. We will speak to you again on our next edition of Double Tap TV. Thanks for being with us.
Hosted by Mark Aflalo and Stephen Scott. Editing Jordan Steves and Mark Aflalo. Voiceover Anna Vicino. Integrated Described Video Specialist Ron Rickford. Coordinating Producer Jennifer Johnson. Director Production Kara Nye. Director Programming Brian Perdue. VP Content Development and Programming John Melville. President and CEO David Arrington. Copyright 2022 Accessible Media Inc.